Okay, so this is a video lecture on the second meditation of Descartes, of the nature of the human mind, that it is more easily known than the body. So, Descartes commences the second meditation with the realization that he has so many doubts, so much so that he feels as if he were in a deep whirlpool. Imagine yourself inside a whirlpool. You cannot touch both the ground and you cannot touch the ceiling or the top of it. You're just spinning. So that's how he feels. Precisely because he thought as if his doubts could get him nowhere. Even so, Descartes continues to hold the universal doubt as if it is true in order to determine what can possibly be certain. If only one thing is shown to be certain and unshakable, then Descartes would be satisfied enough for such a discovery. So it is in here that he mentions Archimedes, who claimed that to move the whole globe, it is enough that there is at least one point that is fixed and immovable. Putting that now in Descartes' intention in this second meditation, in other words, Descartes wants to find such an Archimedean point of knowledge, wherein one point of certainty may be used to build a firm and certain foundation of knowledge. So, in the first meditation, just a recap, he enumerated there the possible sources of doubt. And one of the sources that he came upon to realize was the hypothesis of evil genius, that there is a supreme being who is deceiving him, who is giving him doubts, who tricks him in order to conceal the truth from him. So it has been shown by the evil genius hypothesis that memory cannot be the source of certainty, nor can the senses. It is even possible for Descartes that there is nothing at all that is certain and unshakable except the fact that nothing in this world is indeed certain and unshakable. In other words, it is possible that for Descartes, nothing is certain except the fact that nothing is certain. But what comes to mind of Descartes is the fact that he is having these thoughts. In other words, he is doubting his memory and senses, and he is even doubting his own body. So he asks the question, how come I'm still having these thoughts? How come I'm still doubting? So he came to realize, thus Descartes came to the idea that even if the evil genius is so cunning and so devious enough to deceive him of all the things that is doubtful, this evil genius cannot deceive Descartes of his own existence. Why? Because he has to exist for the evil genius to deceive him. Since he is existing, since he is doubting, that's the only way that the evil genius can deceive him. In other words, when Descartes is not existing, then he could not have these doubts. In other words, there's no one to deceive if he is not existing. Therefore, he has to exist. And that's how he came to the conclusion that he has to exist for the evil genius to deceive him. As such, Descartes further concludes the following proposition: I am, I exist. Or the most commonly formulation, cogito ergo sum, which is necessarily true each time Descartes, conceive, Descartes conceives of it. However, even with such a discovered certainty, it is not yet clear for Descartes what his nature is, or what the nature of this I, the one that doubts, is. In order to answer the question of the I's nature, Descartes went back to his former beliefs about the self. So Descartes believed himself, first of all, to be a man. He believed that he has a body, meaning possessing face, hands, and other body parts. He also believed that he is capable of movement, of feeling, and even of thinking. But when these beliefs are considered under the assumption or under the presence of an evil genius deceiving him, then these beliefs become uncertain and doubtful. Precisely because it, it is conceivable that the evil genius is deceiving him of having a body, of possessing a face, hands, or other body parts, and that he is also being deceived of being capable of movement, of feeling, and of thinking. It is conceivable that Descartes is even deceived, of perceiving his own body when it could be a fact that he has no body. He might also be deceived of his feelings, as in the case of experiencing such feelings in a dream, and are found to have no basis in reality at all. How about thinking? The activity of thinking. So a while ago, we have came upon to the common formulation of Descartes, cogito ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I exist. But in the book, it's simply I am, I exist. But later on, it was reformulated, to cogito ergo sum. What about thinking? So Descartes has already ascertained one certain and unshakable proposition, which is I am, I exist, on the basis of his own thinking. As such, thinking is something that cannot be separated from his nature. So this leads to another discovery of Descartes. His nature must be as a thinking thing, or a res cogitans. But what does it mean to be a thinking thing? Descartes says, a thing that doubts, understands, that affirms, that denies, that wishes to do this and does not wish to do that. In other words, will. And also that imagines and perceives by the senses. Then Descartes reverted to the belief that he knows of the existence of bodies. This is in order for Descartes to examine the nature of a body and also to show that the mind is qualitatively better than the body, as is the subtitle of this second meditation. So he starts from the observation that those bodies which we touch and see are known better. In other words, are clearer and more distinct than minds. He then sets out to examine one particular body, a piece of wax. So this wax has certain properties. Its particular color, its figure, and size are apparent. It is perceived by the senses. Now, imagine putting this piece of wax by the fire. Imagine putting this piece of wax by the fire. Suddenly, these properties change. The properties that are perceived by the senses change. Descartes then asked the meditator, does the same wax remain after the change? His answer, which he thinks most people would agree, is that it remains. To go further, what made it the same piece of wax? It cannot be its perceived properties since they have all changed, right? When you put a candle wax by a fire, it changes. First, it becomes liquid. Then, when it dries out, it becomes solid again. But the form of the candle is not the same anymore. But you can still see the likeness of the candle in the melted candle wax. In other words, the wax itself. So it cannot be the perceived properties that makes it the same wax. So there must be something extended, flexible, mutable, that remains, even if one changes or removes some of its properties. So how then is Descartes able to know the mutability of the wax extension? To answer such a question, Descartes has advanced an argument from elimination. So first, it cannot be the senses, he says, since the senses can only perceive the properties of the wax former and latter forms. And there's the possibility of the wax having countless forms. And the senses could not perceive them easily when it has countless forms. In other words, what the senses can only see is the external or the outer superficial appearance of the wax. Since it changes, since the properties change, what the senses see are the change properties. Second, it cannot also be the imagination. Since if it is imagination, then we would have to imagine all these possible countless forms of the wax before we could arrive to the mutability of the wax extension. And imagination cannot do that. So since it cannot be the senses or imagination, it must be, Descartes says, my mind alone, which perceives the change waxed, which perceives the wax that has been put to fire as the same wax. So by the end of this meditation too, Descartes actually became more specific to this particular mental faculty, which he calls the intellect. So although Descartes focused much attention on a piece of wax, he intends his analysis of the wax to apply to all kinds of bodies. When we say that we see a wax or a table or a group of people. The language seems to suggest that it is through the senses that we are able to discern the nature of a thing. But as we have seen, not the case for Descartes. This is not the case. It is not the senses that see the nature of a thing. Recognizing something as a wax, a table, or a group of people requires an additional mental act beyond experiencing the images by the senses. Example, as when one looks out the window and see a group of people, the immediate judgment there would be that one sees a group of people, not hats and coats which could be covering automata or automatic machines. So there lies a difference from the sense data of merely seeing automata, from the sense data of seeing people. So the difference lies in a faculty of judgment which Descartes calls the intellect. So such a faculty is what enables us to determine that the sense data before us pertain to people. In other words, it is what sees the nature of a thing. And this is evident in our everyday life experience. When we see people, even from far away, we already know that they are people. When we see something, um, some animals, even from far away, you can only you can already tell what animals are those, especially when they make noises. But even if their noises, no, the noises that they make, for example, an impaired dog who cannot bark normally, you will still be able to know that he is a dog. It is a dog. Despite the changed act of barking, despite the change of tone of the dog, you will still be able to discern that it is a dog, precisely because of this intellect. Again, going back, it is not the senses that perceive the nature of a thing, since what the senses can only see are the superficial, the properties that somewhat change. In other words, these properties can change over time. Just like seeing a person who went under surgery because of a major accident, you will still be able to know that person despite his unfortunate appearance. Okay, I hope that's clear. So the method of the meditations requires that that only what has been accepted in the previous meditation can be used to develop the ideas in the next. So what have so far been established are the following. So Descartes' existence could not be doubted since he has to exist for the evil genius to deceive him, and since he is being deceived, he must exist. The nature of the I as a res cogitans, a thinking thing. The nature of the body as a res extensa, or an unextended thing. So hence Descartes can only build the third meditation on these certainties. While these facts may seem inadequate to be a basis for a new certain knowledge, they will be surprisingly used to prove that an actual infinite being that has all perfections, namely God, exist.